Human returned from a certain death rescue for the alien girl bearing a relic her clan forbade. Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. John Carter stood at the edge of the crumbling canyon, the wind howling around him, carrying with it the faint scent of burnt metal and ash. His heart raced, adrenaline still surging through his veins from the mission he had just completed, a mission that had been nothing short of a miracle. Not many would have dared to undertake it, and even fewer would have survived. But here he was, standing tall, with the relic that could change everything. The Tanathan Queen's secret artifact, the one her clan had forbidden anyone to touch. The same artifact he had fought to bring back, against all odds, from the heart of enemy territory. A relic so powerful that even the Queen's own people feared it, yet he, a mere human, had carried it through hell itself to bring it back. The skies above were darkening as the sun began to set behind the jagged peaks of the distant mountains, casting long shadows over the alien landscape. It was then that John thought of her. Ariel. The alien girl he had rescued, the one whose life had been at risk from the moment he had set foot in the enemy stronghold. He hadn't hesitated for a second when he saw her, bound and vulnerable, left to die. Something about her, her courage, her innocence, had struck a chord deep within him. He had to save her, no matter the cost. And now, as he stood there, holding the very relic that could alter her fate, he couldn't help but wonder how she would react when she learned the truth. That the very thing her people had forbidden, the artifact she was never supposed to touch, was now in his hands. His duty wasn't just to bring her back, it was to protect her from the consequences of this forbidden item. But the journey back hadn't been easy. Every step was a struggle against the elements, against enemies who would stop at nothing to reclaim what he had taken. John had seen death's face more times than he cared to count during the mission. Yet, each time, something inside him told him to press on, to keep fighting, to never give up. It was a sense of purpose that kept him alive, a sense of duty that never allowed him to falter. As the last of the daylight faded, John adjusted the strap of the bag holding the relic and began the long trek back toward the city where Ariel awaited him. His mind wandered to her once more. She had been through so much, captured, betrayed, and forced to witness the horrors of her own people's traditions. She had looked at him with a mixture of awe and disbelief when he had rescued her. But John knew there was more to her story, and he was determined to help her uncover it. He had promised to be her protector, her ally in a world that saw her as little more than a tool to be used and discarded. As he walked through the gathering darkness, John knew that the hardest part was yet to come. He wasn't just bringing back a relic, he was bringing back the truth, and with it, the promise of a new beginning for Ariel and her people. But for now, all he could do was take one step at a time, knowing that whatever awaited them, he would face it with the same unwavering resolve that had carried him this far. The journey back was long and treacherous, but John Carter's resolve never wavered. The weight of the relic in his bag was a constant reminder of the delicate balance he had to maintain. He had saved Ariel, yes, but the artifact he carried could unravel everything for both their worlds. With each step, he could feel the gravity of what he was about to face. Ariel's people had forbidden anyone to touch this relic, an ancient object of immense power. And yet, here he was, the one human who had not only touched it but also survived the horrors it had been hidden away to protect. He looked down at the path beneath his boots, each footstep echoing in the silence of the alien landscape. The sky above was a deep violet, the stars just beginning to twinkle as night approached. The chill in the air was a constant reminder of how far he had come, both literally and figuratively. He had crossed battlefields, scaled rocky cliffs, and faced dangers few could even imagine. Yet, none of that compared to the moment when he would have to explain everything to Ariel. He had no illusions. The relic was far more than a mere artifact, it was a symbol of the power her people wielded, the power they feared, and now, it was in his hands. The thought weighed heavily on him. Would she be able to forgive him for bringing it back? Would she understand why he had risked everything to save her? As the light from the setting sun began to fade, John caught sight of the small settlement in the distance. Ariel was waiting for him there, her wide eyes full of curiosity and hope when he had left her behind. He had promised her he would return, and he had. But what would he return with? The relic was more than a token, it was a message, a sign that something had changed. And it was that very change that would bring them together once more. John's mind raced as he neared the settlement. He couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. This was no longer just about rescuing Ariel, it was about what came next. The truth of her past, her people's secrets, and his role in it all. He wasn't just the hero anymore. He was a part of something bigger, something that had the potential to change the fate of both his species and hers. As he entered the settlement, he saw her standing there, waiting for him. Ariel's face lit up when she saw him, but as she noticed the bag slung across his shoulder, her expression shifted. There was a quiet apprehension in her eyes. John walked toward her, trying to steady his breath. He had promised her the truth, and now he would have to give it to her. He would have to explain why he had brought the relic with him, what it meant, and what it could mean for both their futures. She looked at him with a mixture of hope and doubt, as though waiting for the moment when everything would fall into place. And in that moment, as he stood before her, John realized that no matter what happened next, he had already changed everything by simply returning. The relic, the mission, and the bond they shared, they were all part of something greater than either of them could have imagined. It was no longer just about survival. It was about a future neither of them had planned for. But one thing was certain, whatever came next, they would face it together. The air was thick with anticipation as John Carter stood in front of Ariel, the weight of the relic pressing against his chest like a secret that could change everything. He had crossed a galaxy to bring her back, to protect her from the dangers that lay in the shadows of her own people. And now, standing before her with the relic in hand, he had to explain why he had risked it all. Ariel's gaze was steady, but there was a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes as she looked at him. She had trusted him to save her, but this? This was something far bigger than either of them. "John," she began, her voice soft yet steady, "what's in the bag?" He took a deep breath, his heart racing. He had never been good at this, at explaining the unexplainable. "Ariel," he said, his voice steady but laced with the gravity of what he was about to say, "what I brought back is not just for you. It's for both of us. For our future." Her brow furrowed as she took a cautious step toward him. "What are you talking about?" Her eyes flickered to the bag again. "The relic, it's more than just a symbol of your people's power," John continued. "It's a key to understanding everything, your past, your future, and the future of your people. The Queen's people." Ariel's expression hardened. "You don't understand," she said, her voice tinged with frustration. "That relic, it's forbidden. My people, my clan, they have laws. Laws that say no one should ever possess it." John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know," he said quietly. "But I couldn't let you die. I couldn't leave you behind." Ariel took a step back, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You risked everything for me, for a relic?" Her voice was barely above a whisper now. "Don't you see? What I carry isn't just a piece of history. It's dangerous. My people have forbidden it for a reason." If they knew, she stopped, her voice catching in her throat. John reached out, placing a hand on her shoulder gently, grounding her in the moment. "They don't have to know," he said softly. "Not yet. I'll protect you, Ariel. I promised you that." She looked up at him, searching his eyes as though trying to find the truth in his words. She had been through so much, so many betrayals, so many broken promises. But this? This was different. There was no lie in his gaze, no hidden agenda. It was just him, human, flawed, but unwavering. Ariel exhaled sharply, her shoulders sagging with the weight of what she had been carrying for so long. "I don't know if I can trust anyone anymore, John," she whispered. "But I want to believe you." John smiled gently, his thumb brushing the back of her hand in a gesture of reassurance. "You don't have to trust anyone else. You just have to trust me." The silence between them stretched for a moment before she nodded slowly, a flicker of hope returning to her eyes. She had been alone for so long, betrayed by her own people, trapped by their rules. But now, in this moment, she wasn't alone. They weren't alone. Together, they would face whatever came next. And whatever that was, John knew they would figure it out, one step at a time. The next morning, the warmth of the sun on his face was a welcome contrast to the cold, sleepless night that had passed. John Carter stood outside the small settlement where Ariel had been waiting for him, her hopeful expression still fresh in his mind. He had returned, but now the real challenge awaited. What would happen when Ariel's people discovered the relic? Would they see it as a blessing, or would it spark a war? His mind raced with possibilities, but one thing was certain: the decisions they made in the coming days would change everything for both their worlds. Ariel had asked him not to tell anyone about the relic, and he had agreed, at least for now. But he knew the truth couldn't stay hidden forever. As the first rays of sunlight cut through the horizon, casting long shadows over the land, John turned and walked toward the small building where Ariel had been staying. Inside, she was sitting by the window, her gaze lost in thought. When she heard the soft crunch of his boots on the gravel outside, she turned, her eyes meeting his. A small smile tugged at the corner of her lips, but it was filled with uncertainty. She had trusted him once, but the weight of the relic made it difficult for her to trust anyone fully again. "John," she said, her voice soft but strong. "You're back." He nodded, stepping inside. "I told you I would be." He stood there for a moment, the silence between them thick with anticipation. Finally, Ariel spoke again, her voice quieter this time. "What happens now?" John took a deep breath, his fingers unconsciously brushing the strap of the bag that held the relic. "We move forward," he said, his voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "We face whatever comes next together." Ariel stared at him for a long moment, as if searching for something in his eyes. Finally, she nodded, though her expression remained guarded. "I want to believe you," she whispered. "I really do." John stepped closer, his gaze softening. "You don't have to believe me now. You just have to know that I'm here, and I'll do everything I can to protect you." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, it felt as though the entire world had paused. They were in this together, no matter what came next. Slowly, Ariel stood, walking toward the door. She glanced back at him, her eyes now filled with determination. "Then let's go," she said. "Whatever it is, we'll face it head-on." John followed her, a sense of pride swelling in his chest. She was no longer the frightened girl he had rescued, she was a warrior in her own right, ready to face the future. They stepped outside, the morning sun casting a golden glow over the landscape, and for the first time since he had met Ariel, John felt a flicker of hope for what was to come. Whatever the future held, they would face it together, side by side, as allies, as protectors of each other. And perhaps, in time, as more than that. As they walked through the settlement, John and Ariel found themselves growing increasingly aware of the tension in the air. The quiet hum of the morning was broken by the sound of footsteps behind them. John instinctively turned, his hand subtly resting near the hilt of the weapon he always carried. The figure approaching them was tall, with bright blue skin and striking, almost unnatural golden eyes, an alien soldier, unmistakably from Ariel's clan. John had been prepared for this moment, but the reality of it was still jarring. "Ariel," the soldier called, his voice low but firm. Ariel's posture stiffened slightly as she turned to face him. "Torek," she said, her voice steady despite the undercurrent of unease. "What are you doing here?" Torek stopped a few paces away, his gaze shifting from Ariel to John and back again. "I was sent to retrieve you. The clan has orders." Ariel's expression hardened, but she said nothing for a moment. John, sensing the weight of the situation, stepped slightly in front of her, his presence protective but calm. "What orders?" Ariel asked, her voice clipped. Torek's golden eyes flickered briefly with something like hesitation before he answered. "You are to return to the capital. The clan wishes to discuss your actions." John's eyes narrowed, but he kept his composure. He knew that the relic would complicate things, but he hadn't expected the clan to act so quickly. Ariel took a slow breath and looked up at John, her eyes filled with determination. "I'm not going back," she said, her voice quiet but unwavering. Torek's expression shifted, a mixture of confusion and authority. "You don't have a choice, Ariel. The clan will not allow you to defy them." John could feel the tension rising between them, and he knew that this confrontation could escalate quickly. He placed a hand on Ariel's shoulder, his voice calm but firm. "She's not going anywhere with you," he said, looking directly at Torek. The soldier paused, his expression unreadable, but John could see the tension in his posture. The standoff lasted for a long moment, but then something in Torek's expression softened. "This is not over," he said, his voice low. "The clan will not forget this." Without another word, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the settlement's narrow streets. John exhaled slowly, his muscles relaxing slightly, but he remained alert. Ariel stood there, her gaze fixed on the spot where Torek had been. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she looked up at John, her eyes conflicted but resolute. "That was only the beginning," she said quietly. "The clan will come for me again. And next time, they may not be so understanding." John nodded, his hand still on her shoulder. "We'll be ready. Together." The weight of the relic, still tucked safely in the bag, seemed to grow heavier with each passing moment. John knew that whatever came next, their journey had only just begun. But in that moment, as they stood side by side in the quiet of the alien settlement, he felt a deep sense of purpose. No matter what Ariel's clan had planned, he was ready to face it all with her. The days that followed were tense, but John and Ariel had no choice but to prepare for whatever might come next. The relic weighed heavily on both of them, not just physically, but emotionally. They knew that Ariel's clan would not stop until they had reclaimed what John had brought back. It was only a matter of time before they returned, and the threats they made were not to be taken lightly. But for now, they had to make their stand. As the sun rose each morning, casting its soft light over the small settlement, they spent their time preparing. John worked to reinforce their defenses, setting up small traps and securing the settlement's perimeter as best as he could with the resources they had. Ariel, meanwhile, focused on understanding more about the relic and its significance. The more she studied it, the more she realized how little she truly knew about her people's past. The relic was a symbol of ancient power, one that her clan had kept hidden away for centuries. But what did it truly mean? As the days passed, the tension between them grew, not from any disagreement, but from the weight of what they were facing. Ariel's thoughts were often distant, her gaze fixed on the horizon, as though waiting for something. John noticed the change in her, the way she seemed to withdraw at times, as though she were carrying a burden she didn't know how to share. One evening, as they sat together by the fire, John broke the silence. "You're thinking about what comes next, aren't you?" Ariel looked at him, her eyes soft but filled with uncertainty. "I don't know what to think anymore," she said quietly. "My people, they've always been the center of everything for me. But now, after everything we've been through, I'm not sure where I fit in. I'm not sure I even know who I am anymore." John's gaze softened as he reached across the fire, his hand gently touching hers. "You're not alone in this, Ariel. Whatever happens, I'm with you. We're in this together." She didn't respond right away, but after a long pause, she squeezed his hand. "I'm scared, John. Scared of what they'll do. Scared of what we'll have to face." John nodded, his eyes filled with understanding. "I know. But I promise you, I won't let anything happen to you." The fire crackled between them, the warmth of the flames providing a small comfort against the chill of the night. "We'll face whatever comes, together," John added, his voice filled with determination. Ariel took a deep breath, her shoulders straightening as she looked at him. "You're right. Together." The next morning, they set out for a nearby cave system that they had found on their scouting trips, hoping it would provide some shelter and a place to regroup if things became too dangerous. The path to the caves was treacherous, the rocks slippery from recent rainfall, but they pushed on, both of them determined to find a place where they could make their stand. As they reached the entrance to the cave, they turned to look back at the settlement, knowing that it might be the last time they saw it. Whatever happened next, they were ready to face it side by side, with the relic in hand and their bond stronger than ever. The unknown stretched out before them, but they knew one thing for certain: they would not back down. The cave entrance loomed before them, dark and foreboding, but a sanctuary all the same. John and Ariel entered cautiously, their footsteps echoing off the jagged walls as they made their way deeper into the cool, quiet darkness. The sounds of the outside world, wind, rustling leaves, distant cries of alien creatures, faded as they moved further in, leaving only the soft crunch of their boots on the rocky floor. Inside, the air was damp but surprisingly still. The flickering light from John's portable lantern cast long shadows on the walls, revealing strange, alien markings etched into the stone. Ariel's fingers brushed the wall, her touch light as she traced the unfamiliar symbols. "What are these?" she asked, her voice hushed as if afraid to disturb the ancient silence. John glanced at the markings, his brow furrowing in thought. "I'm not sure," he replied, his voice low. "They look like some kind of writing, but I can't make out the language." Ariel studied the markings more closely, her expression thoughtful. "It could be from my people's past," she said, a hint of wonder in her voice. "Maybe this cave was once important to them. Maybe it holds the answers we're looking for." John gave a small nod, though he was more focused on the present. He glanced back toward the entrance. The journey here had been treacherous, but it was far from over. They couldn't afford to be complacent. The relic was still with them, and with it, the looming threat from Ariel's clan. He had no illusions about what might happen if they were discovered. "We'll figure it out later," John said, turning to face Ariel. "For now, we need to focus on making this place secure. We don't know how much time we have before they come for us." Ariel nodded, though she still seemed lost in thought. She was no longer the frightened girl who had needed saving, she had become a partner in this struggle, a fierce and determined ally. But there were still so many unknowns. She had lived her life according to the rules of her people, never questioning their laws or traditions. Now, she was faced with a choice that would determine not just her future, but the future of her entire clan. John could see the conflict in her eyes, the weight of the decision that lay ahead. He couldn't pretend to understand what it meant to be part of a culture so different from his own, but he did understand the burden of responsibility. He knew what it was like to have your world turned upside down, to be faced with a decision that would change everything. He could see that Ariel was struggling with it, and he wished there was more he could do to make it easier for her. As they continued deeper into the cave, the air grew cooler, and the silence became more oppressive. They found a small, flat area near the back, where they could set up camp. John unpacked their supplies and began setting up a simple shelter while Ariel continued to study the walls, her mind clearly elsewhere. She had been quiet for a while now, and John could tell that she was processing everything. She had always been strong, but now she was beginning to carry the weight of her people's history, their secrets, their burdens. She had to decide what path she would take, and it wasn't going to be easy. When they had finished setting up, John sat down next to her, his eyes scanning the cave around them. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together," he said, his voice calm and steady. Ariel met his gaze, and for a moment, the uncertainty in her eyes seemed to fade. She gave a small, appreciative nod before turning her attention back to the relic. "Together," she agreed quietly, her voice resolute. They both knew the road ahead would be difficult, but in that moment, as they sat side by side in the dim light of the cave, they felt stronger than they had before. They weren't just surviving anymore. They were choosing to fight for themselves, for each other, and for whatever future they could build together. The silence in the cave grew heavier with each passing moment, the only sound the occasional drip of water from the jagged ceiling. John sat across from Ariel, who had been unusually quiet for hours now. He knew she was deep in thought, her mind wrestling with the enormity of their situation. The relic, the impending confrontation with her people, and the future they could no longer avoid, it was all weighing on her. John had never been one for many words, but now he found himself searching for something to say, something to ease the tension that hung between them. "Ariel," he began softly, his voice breaking the silence, "we'll figure this out. Whatever happens, we'll face it together. You don't have to carry all of this alone." Ariel didn't look up at him right away. She simply stared at the relic in her hands, her fingers gently tracing the markings on the surface. After a long pause, she finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never been allowed to question anything my people believed. The relic was always something sacred, something untouchable. And now, here I am, holding it. And with it, everything is changing. I don't know who I am anymore, John." He could see the struggle in her eyes, the weight of her heritage pressing down on her. Ariel had always been strong, but now she was standing at a crossroads. The past, her clan's laws, everything she had once believed in, was colliding with the reality of their journey together. "I know it's hard," John said, his voice filled with empathy. "But that's the thing about change, it's not always easy, but it's necessary. You're not just carrying the relic. You're carrying the future, not just for your people, but for you, too." Ariel finally looked up, her gaze locking with his. "But what if it's too much? What if my people never accept what I've done, what I've become?" John met her gaze with steady determination. "Then we'll face them. Together. You're not alone in this." The weight of his words hung in the air, and for a brief moment, Ariel allowed herself to believe them. She took a deep breath, feeling the knot in her chest loosen slightly. It wasn't a solution, not yet, but it was something to hold on to. Something to fight for. Together, she repeated, as if the word itself held some kind of power. The fire crackled softly beside them, casting fleeting shadows on the walls of the cave. Ariel stood up, her expression more resolute now, though still tinged with uncertainty. She looked at John, her eyes filled with gratitude. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For everything." John stood as well, his eyes softening. "I'm not doing this for thanks. I'm doing it because I believe in you, Ariel. And I believe in us. We'll find a way." As the day turned into night, they settled into the cave, knowing the days ahead would be filled with more challenges, but also with the possibility of something new, something that neither of them had expected, but something they would face together. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, they both felt ready to face it. The relic, still in Ariel's hands, seemed to pulse with an energy of its own, as though it knew that it was only the beginning of something far greater. Whatever that was, they would discover it side by side. The night outside the cave had grown impossibly still, as if the world itself were holding its breath for what would come next. John and Ariel stood near the entrance, the soft glow of the relic illuminating their faces with a gentle blue shimmer. It was the first time John had seen it respond to anything, and from the look in Ariel's eyes, she had not expected it either. Ariel held the relic carefully, her fingers trembling slightly, not from fear but from a dawning realization. "John," she whispered, her voice carrying a depth he had not heard before, "I think it wants to be found. Not by my clan, but by me." John stepped closer, drawn in by the calm certainty in her tone. "What do you mean?" She lifted the relic, letting the soft glow spill across the cave walls. The ancient markings carved into the stone began to shift subtly, reacting to the light. Shapes rearranged, forming patterns that neither of them had noticed before. "It is not just a relic," Ariel murmured. "It is a guide. A memory left by the ones who came before us. My people hid it because they feared what they did not understand." John watched the shifting symbols with a quiet awe. "And you? Do you understand it?" Ariel gave a small, almost wistful smile. "I think I am beginning to." She walked slowly to the center of the cave, the relic held close. The markings brightened, forming a path of soft blue light under her feet. John followed, staying a respectful distance behind her. This was her moment, not his. She placed the relic upon a natural stone pedestal that looked as though it had been waiting centuries for this exact purpose. As soon as it touched the surface, the light spread outward, forming gentle waves across the cavern walls. No tremor, no sound, just a profound stillness, as though the cave itself were welcoming a long-lost piece of its history. Ariel inhaled deeply. "All my life, they told us this relic was forbidden. That touching it would bring misfortune." She paused, her gaze softening. "But maybe the misfortune came from turning away from what we were meant to face." John felt the truth in her words. He stepped beside her, speaking softly. So what does this mean for you? Ariel looked at him, and for the first time since he had rescued her, there was no doubt in her eyes, only clarity. It means I am no longer running from my people or their expectations, she said. I am choosing my own path now. She reached out and gently took his hand, her touch warm and deliberate. And I want you with me, John. Whatever comes next. The cave lights dimmed again, settling into a steady, peaceful glow. John squeezed her hand, a quiet strength passing between them. Then that is exactly where I will be, he said. Right beside you. Ariel exhaled, a breath that held relief, acceptance, and hope. The kind of hope that reshapes destinies. Together, they stepped back from the pedestal. The relic remained, glowing softly, no longer a forbidden artifact of fear but a symbol of choice, her choice. Outside, the faint sound of wind began to rise again, carrying with it the promise of change. The clan would come. Challenges would come. But inside the quiet heart of the cave, Ariel and John stood united, ready to face whatever the future demanded of them. In the stillness, the relic flickered one last time, casting its gentle glow across Ariel's face. For the first time, she did not look afraid. She looked whole.